All right, today's back day. And we're going to be doing one of my favorite exercises. It's called the Pendley row. So you're going to set this up like you would if you were doing a deadlift, okay? So I have my barbell here, and I have it set so that I have a bar on the floor like I would a deadlift. Obviously, I'm using a lightweight. You want to use the same weight that you would for an upright row, or excuse me, for a bent over row. The main differences here are, one, you're pulling the weight off the floor and you're bringing it down to the floor each time, all right? So it is more like a pull from the floor, you're yanking it off the floor, rather than it just being, just bent and you're just firing away. This one's all about the reset. So now you can do this one a little bit on the heavier side because you're dropping the weight on the ground each time. Additionally, your hands are going to be in a more narrow position because you're pulling more like a fire up, right? So as you're pulling it, since you're bent over more, you're firing in between those shoulder blades a little bit. You're really going to hit the bottom of the lats. You're going to feel a lot of thickness and a lot of strength in this move. This is a definite power move, but it will build a really, really strong back, which is really going to help from an aesthetic point of view to have a very wide, strong back. So you definitely want to make sure that you're incorporating this. It's also a little bit easier on the lower back from a lifting point perspective as you would if you were holding yourself up for the bent over row. So I really like this, and it's got a little extra movements to it that make it just a cool move. All right, so I'm going to go up to it again. Everything pretty much is like I would be doing if I were doing a deadlift. Stepping up to the bar, making sure it's about an inch or so from my shins. And then as I'm going down, right, I'm staying in this bent position. I'm not standing up here, and then I'm pulling the lats down, getting everything engaged, and firing it up off the floor and all the way back down. One of the things that I like to do, right, as I'm firing that up, is I'm going to roll it out a little bit and then roll it back, because that helps the lats get a little bit more engaged, which gives me a little bit of power, and it kind of gives you that little bit of momentum. So it's almost a cheat, but at the same time, it's a great way to get a little bit more lat into the movement. So all I do is just move it forward a couple inches, pull it back, and yank. Load and go. You'll notice that as you do this, you get a little bit more power, a little bit more strength. So while we're doing a more aesthetic type of focus on this particular series of workouts, this gives you a great way to add a compound lift with a little power, a little explosiveness to help build an overall thick, attractive looking back. All right, so we're going to move on to the next. Okay, next up, we have the half kneeling band or cable row. Again, I'm going to be using the band here. I like the bands because it gives you that more control. I mean, it's similar to a cable, but I like the bands because they're more convenient. I can do this exercise anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a half kneeling position, okay? So that essentially means one knee's on the ground, one knee's up. The knee that is up, the opposite hand is going to be doing the work, okay? Now what I want to do here, the reason that we're doing this in a half kneeling position is because it gets more core engaged. So as I'm pulling, the shoulder's reaching back, right? I'm not flinging my elbow back, I'm pulling everything back. The entire side of the body is moving. And as I'm doing that, the rest of me is stable. So obviously the heavier you go and the longer you give a little pause in the back there, the more core it's going to be getting, especially on the side here. So we're pulling, and all that should be moving is the arm. If you're leaning forward or you're turning or things like that, you're not in a stable position. So I want you to be stable. Then again, switch sides, and we're doing the row. Just the arm is moving. Core is engaged, hip and glute are engaged, and so this is all that I'm doing. Give that a try. Make sure you're stable. Stability is the key for this exercise. All right, next up. Next, we're going to be doing an EZ bar pullover. Why am I doing the EZ bar? Because it gives me multiple grip options, okay? You can do these either wide, you can do them neutral, or you can do them narrow. I, for my demonstrations, and personally prefer a neutral. Now, why am I doing that? Because then it leaves my shoulders in the normal neutral position. I mean, I have wide shoulders, so it might be a little bit wider or a little bit more narrow for me. For most people, this neutral grip is going to be neutral to the entire body. This gives me a more natural way of pulling over with the shoulders. So I'm going to feel it more through here. If I'm more narrow, I can't necessarily get back as well as I want to. If I'm out too wide, it takes away from that. So I'm going to use neutral for these, okay? So as I'm doing this, I'm holding it a neutral grip, and I'm going to do a bent elbow. If I were to do it straight arm, that's going to hit more of the chest. But I want to make sure that I am doing this with a bent arm so that it hits more of the back. Specifically, it's going to be hitting the rhomboid area. So that area that's right here underneath the shoulder blades, that pull area. Great for the thoracic, right? So this is going to be very much a mobility move, but it's also a strength move. Again, you could call this a compound lift because it is using your thoracic, one joint. It is using your elbows, 2 joints, shoulders, 3 joints, compound movement, hitting multiple muscles at once. But what I want you to remember here is that you're not pulling with your arms, you're pulling with the back. The shoulder and the back are going to be doing most of the work. If you're using your elbow too much, you're going to be getting a lot of tricep in there. Don't want to be doing that. So let me demonstrate the movement. So I take my neutral grip, okay? I'm starting here in this straight arm position, but I'm going to bend the arms enough to where they're almost touching this parallel with the side. That's parallel, so a little bit above parallel, right? This gives me that bent arm motion. You can go a little bit higher if you feel like it. This is where I'm going. And now I'm going to reach back, and I'm using my abs to stabilize, and I'm going to arc my back a little bit. Okay, so I'm in this arched position, and I'm not just throwing my arms up, okay? I am here, and I'm going to pull. So I should almost feel like my shoulder blades are grabbing onto the seat. And this reaching part really gets a good stretch through the lats underneath the shoulders, right? That's the teres muscles, even the rhomboids are getting worked in there. It's a great way to work all the little muscles that don't normally get worked in your back. If you ever see someone with just an absolute shredded back, you'll know these muscles. But this is a feel-good move. Obviously, the heavier it is, the more it's going to be. But notice how my arm is only pulling forward. It's not extending or anything like that from the shoulder joint. Shoulder joint is more or less there in an isolated way. But it's important to be able to arc and extend here through the thoracic, and then as you're pulling forward, squeezing down with the arms and feeling it in the abs. So you should be able to feel this in almost a core exercise as well. And that is the pullover. Remember, it's all through the arms. It is not an extension. We're not throwing the arms around. Bent arm, pulling through the back. Should feel good. Should feel like your arms are getting opened up. You should be reaching back as far as you can. All right, a couple more to go. All right, we're going back to our band. We're going to do some band twists. Now, these are a little bit different than maybe a twist that you've done before, because what I want you to do is focus on the lower core, but at the same time, hip stability and rotation. So I'll explain that in a second. But this is a great exercise to do to start building up that rotation through the back. We spend so much time going forward and backwards, we want to get a little rotation in so that our back doesn't become super stiff. So what we're going to do is take our band, and we're not going to be reaching out in front. We're going to be holding it close. And what I want you to do here, all right, so if you look from the side, I'm like, I don't know, 6 inches away from my chest, okay? But I'm holding it here. Arms are bent, holding it here. I'm not extending it out. I'm keeping it in. Why? Because I want to get a full rotation, again, through the hip. The front leg, the leg that's going to be feeling the motion, I'm planting this into the ground, and I'm almost locking my leg, but not quite. The back leg is going to be pivoting. Okay, so if you play golf, this is kind of like a golf swing. But what I want you to do is pivot on the hip. The hip is the pole to which you are pivoting on. And you're going to feel that rotation. All right, you're going to feel the strength and stability through that hip. So as you pull, the band is almost wrapping around you. And after I do this for a few, and my hip is staying nice and stable and getting that rotation, I start to feel a little bit of a burn up in here. Again, we're going through stability and rotation here with the hip, and the core is doing the movement. It is a shoulder turn, so everything from the waist up is turning, and the hip is rotating on the hip. Boom, right? Think of it as swinging a bat, right? I'm planting and pivoting. I'm not swaying, I'm not pressing, pivoting and turning. That's what you want to do for these twists. All right, we got one more to go. Last exercise up are shrugs. We're going to do shrugs in two ways. We're going to do this because it's going to help hit the muscle in different ways, and it's going to also give you a little bit of extra mobility through the shoulders, right? Don't want tight shoulders. So we're going to do the barbell shrug to the front, and then we're going to do it behind the back. So as you notice that as I do that, shoulders are leaning forward. I do it in the front, pulled open in the back. Again, gives us a little bit more mobility and flexibility in the traps, and it will, especially if you do the back ones, get a little bit more of a contraction in the upper trap, and so I'll do my best to demonstrate that here when I show it to you. But two things I want you to remember with the shrugs. First and foremost, there should be a little bit of a shrug. All right, we're not shrugging towards the ears. You want to think more shrugging behind the head. All right? I'm not reaching my neck forward. Pulling up. Again, it's one of those situations, right, where I should be able to shrug and move my neck. Because I'm not working my neck, I'm working my traps. If I were to shrug up here, I'm like a turtle, right? So shrug it to the point where here, so I can still move my neck, right? I shouldn't feel any pain when I'm doing it through the neck. So as I grab my bar, and I'm going to lean slightly forward so that I can get into that position a little bit easier, shrugging that way. First of all, you're not dragging the barbell up your thighs, all right? Nobody wants your junk on their barbell. So keep that in mind as you're doing it. Lean slightly forward so the bar comes off of your hips. It will allow the muscle to do more work. Now you can definitely load up on a shrug. It doesn't mean that you should. Because again, you want to make sure the core is engaged. We're not tipping all the way forward. It's just a slight little tip. Now, but my core is really engaged, and there's a lot of stability going on through my body so that I don't fall forward and I don't strain my back. It's a little bit different when we do it from the rear. All right, again, make sure the barbell is in a place where you can easily get it. I like it again in this position here, and as I go down to get it, notice that I'm sitting down into the bar. I'm not just bending over. Sit down, I get my grip, and I stand. The bar should be right below my butt. Again, I'm going to lean back a little bit. Now, this is a case where you're going to definitely be able to drag the bar. It's just physics aren't going to allow you to do it any other way. But again, pulling up, not pulling forward, pulling straight up. So notice that I can do this while I'm still looking and talking at the camera. It does feel really good to do this kind of a shrug. Now, whether or not you can do the same amount of weight, that's up to you. That's going to be more of a comfort and mechanical thing. Okay, again, the hands are going to be different. The shoulders are pulled back a little bit more. So if you don't have the mobility to get behind you and be able to shrug up, right? So my shoulders can go back. If I'm like here and I'm like struggling to get back there, it's probably not the move for you. Pull the shoulders back and straight up. Remember, the shrug is not trying to bring your elbows or your shoulders to your ears. We're not trying to choke ourselves out. It should be enough room to where I can get the actual trap moving, talk, and move my neck at the same time as I'm shrugging all those things. If you can't do that, you either have too much weight, you're not doing it right, or you're trying to ego lift, and we don't want to do that. All right, that is back day. It's going to be a good one. I'll check with you later.